Alright, what's good everyone? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be doing a full in-depth guide to the cameras of the S25 Ultra and just how you can navigate the camera app and how you use it and all the functionalities and everything. I'm going to break it down very simply and show you how to do that. So let's get into it. First things first, with the camera app on Samsung phones, you can double click your power button to quickly access them by default. So 1, 2, and then I'm in the camera app. So when you get into the camera app, it's going to be clean this year. They changed the layout of it. All the core functionalities have been moved from the top to the bottom with this one button over here, and you can slide through them. So I'm going to break down every single one and show you how they work. So first things first, of course, let's start with the default camera mode, because that's where we ended up and that's where you will be most likely. So here you have obviously the shutter button where you take the picture. Shutter just means you're capturing whatever's in front of the camera and then it transfers to a file on your phone. And then at the top, you have your flash. So you can set that to auto. So if it's a darker scene, it will turn on the flash by itself, or you can have it on always. So when you take a picture, the flash will just be on, or set it off so it never turns on. And then you have your megapixel count. So the S25 Ultra actually has a 200 megapixel main camera and then a 50 megapixel ultra wide and a 50 megapixel 5x zoom and a 12 megapixel 3x zoom. Up here, you can switch between all those different megapixel counts. And what that means is that the higher the megapixels, the more information is captured, the more detailed your image will look like, but the files will be bigger. And then it will also take a little bit longer to process and to capture the images. So if you're trying to shoot, like a sports game or something like that, shooting at a higher megapixel count might give you some issues unless you go into pro mode and adjust your shutter speed manually, which I'll show you later on. So you can swap between those. But do note, only the main camera can go up to 200. Otherwise, 50 is where all three of them can, use a 50 megapixel photo. Then you have motion photo. So basically, it just captures the video before and after you take a photo. So that way you can kind of like select the still frame that you want, just in case you miss your shot when you first take it. And then you can also just see like, a fun little video of what's happening when you're taking a photo. And then you got your filters at the top as well. So there's already presets that you have right here. You can download other filters if you go to this button, and that will bring you to the, a different page that Samsung has where they have their own filters that other people have made, they themselves have made, and you can download them and use them. Or you can customize the default filters that are already here if you want, and you can reset it quickly with this little button right there. And then you can actually create filters using other folders that you have on your phone. So for example, if I go to this, it's going to use that photo for reference to create a filter, and then boom. Now I kind of have this washed out gray tone filter created from that picture I used. So that is a fun little feature that you can do. And yeah, that's basically the top. So now let's get to the bottom. And as you can see, there's a little flower here, and basically that is focus enhancer. All it means is that it switches to the ultra wide camera to be able to get closer to a subject, because the main camera, it's a wide angle camera and it's not able to focus that close or as close as the ultra wide camera. So when you switch to the ultra wide camera manually, you can get a little bit closer and see some more detail. But the focus enhancer, it just automatically switches between those cameras whenever it needs to, so that you don't have to really think about that. I usually just leave it off because sometimes when I'm not like close where I need to use the ultra wide camera to focus, it switches automatically and it's not the image that I want. As you can see, it changes the angle, it changes how it looks. And generally the main camera, the 1X camera, is higher quality than the other two. So I want to use that most of the time. So I leave this off, but you can definitely turn it on if you want. Then the numbers at the bottom are obviously the focal lengths. So you have 0.6, which is just the ultra wide camera. It zooms out and shows you everything. But do note that on the side, the perspective will be a little bit warped because it's a really wide angle, right? It's going to be narrow to the middle. And then you have your main camera, the wide angle camera, the main camera. 2X is a digital crop of the main camera sensor. And the 3X is its own camera. 5X is the other camera. 10X is cropping into the 5X camera. And then all the way up to 100, you're cropping into the 5X camera digitally. So all these different focal lengths, you can slide between them just by sliding on the number bar like that. Or as you saw, you can tap between them like this to different increments. I'll show you how to add 2X and other focal lengths to be here by default. So that is how you zoom in and out with the range. You could also use 2 fingers to zoom in like that if you want, but this is just so much faster to slide along here. And then you can swipe down on the screen to flip to your selfie camera, or swipe up to flip back. And right here, these buttons, you will see a bunch of different options. So you have your settings where you go straight into your camera settings and you can adjust it as you want. And then you have your flash as well. You have a timer, so you can set it to take a picture after these time increments. So 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then you have the aspect ratio. So normally by default, most smartphones shoot at a 3:4 aspect ratio, but you can switch this to 9:16, which is more like a traditional camera or like a video aspect ratio. But 9:16 is just cropping into the image. So you might as well shoot 3:4 and then crop it afterwards to 9:16 if you want to in the gallery app. And then you can adjust your megapixels, basically the same settings up there. And then some additional ones like this, exposure meter. You can lower the exposure if you want a darker image, a more contrasty image. And you can raise it up for a lower contrast and a brighter image. I would suggest, lowering it a little bit, because with a darker image, you can kind of go back and raise it up as you need it. Whereas with the brighter image, if you lose detail in the highlights, those details are just gone. You can't really restore them. But a darker image, you can restore the details in that, because it's easier to capture detail in the darkness and bring it up versus the reverse. So that's what I suggest if you're going to use this meter. But it is there to help you adjust your image before you take the shot. And then the next thing you have is the filters again. And then after that is facial effects. So if you want to smoothen out skin or tone, enhance the jawline, just basically using like AI stuff to make faces look different, I guess. I wouldn't say better, because, some people prefer a more realistic look. Some people prefer a more beautified look. So that's up to you. But yeah, you can customize the way faces turn out. And then as you see right here, sometimes you'll see like a little T pop up, and that's basically just highlighting text. So you can use that feature to scan documents and things like that. And when you do it, you press it, you take the image, and then you can adjust the size of the document. So that's really cool. So that is your run through of the basic camera app. All the other apps will kind of follow a similar suit. They will be very, very similar, just have different features depending on what, photo mode you're on or camera mode you're on. But let's go into settings real quick before we get into the other ones. So you have scan documents and text, the thing I showed you, scan QR codes, shot suggestions. So it will help you line up the shot for a better image. I don't really follow it too much, but like it can help you with like getting a better shot in terms of the lighting and the way the camera will handle that. Intelligent optimization. This is just using like AI algorithms to like enhance the image and, get rid of noise in the background or balance the highlights and the lowlights, things like that. And then also, like, let's say you're taking a picture of a landscape, it will enhance based on that, or it will enhance based on like taking a picture of someone's face. You could turn it off to minimum and turn off scene on optimizer, or turn it on. So yeah, it's basically what you want. How much processing do you want the phone to do to the image versus like getting a realistic shot? And then swipe to shutter button. You can swipe to take a burst shot or create a GIF. A GIF is like a short video basically. And then a watermark, you can leave the watermark saying like the name of your phone, the date and the time, and then you can adjust the font style. There's not really a lot of options, and then where it is on the photo. So this is cool if you do a lot of camera comparisons, or like you like to show, what device you're using for your images. It's kind of cool for that. Or you can even, put your own tag. So like I could put Jamal Lee photos. So now every single photo I take will have that watermark, which is pretty cool. So I might just leave that on for myself. And then advanced photo options, high efficiency photos save space on your phone, but the quality is actually lower. So I turn that off because I'd rather just get the most quality I want. And like these phones have 256 gigs of storage and up. So I don't really think you need this high efficiency photo thing. But if you're somebody who takes like 1 million photos, then maybe you might want to turn that on, but you're sacrificing some quality. And then in pro mode, you can set it to take raw photos, or raw and JPEG, or just JPEG. I set it to take raw photos because if I'm in pro mode, that means I'm locking in and trying to get photos that I can edit myself. But not everyone's like that. So you can do JPEG, which you still get a processed image, but it's not as processed. You can have a little bit more control in terms of shutter speed and stuff like that. And I'll show you that later on. Or you can get the best of both worlds. And then you have before and after shutter, or before shutter only for the motion photo. Save selfies as preview. Instead of flipping them around, you can swipe up and down to switch cameras. I turned it off. Auto FPS, I also turn it off because it kind of tries to adjust the FPS to allow the lighting of the video that you're filming to be better or more visible, but I don't like that because I feel like it makes the quality of the image just look worse. So I want it to stay at the frame rate that I set it at. Video stabilization, I leave that on. And then video format, I like to use H.264 because it's the most compatible and it's also higher quality and easier to deal with in different softwares, like it says most compatible. Without HEVC though, you can't do high bitrate videos, HDR, and log apparently in regular photo mode. And then you have zoom in mic, so if you zoom into something, it will enhance just that area of where you're zooming in with the mics, which is kind of cool, but kind of weird. And then you have 360 audio recording, capture immersive sound for, Bluetooth headphones. And then you have audio playback, allow music and other audio to play while you're recording. So yeah, you can allow music to keep playing while you record a video. Kind of useful, but could also get in the way. Tracking autofocus, so if you tap on something, it will try to follow that subject as it moves throughout the frame. Composition guide, I like to have this on. Grid lines and level, it just helps you with lining up a shot. Then location tags, so if you want where you took the photo to be tagged to the image, you can have that on. Shooting methods, this is really important. So using the volume button to take a video or a picture, or you can use it to zoom in and out, which is kind of useful. And then you have voice commands, so you can say smile, cheese, capture, shoot, or to record videos, you say record video. That's also pretty cool. Floating shutter, so it's a shutter button that floats across the screen to make it a little bit easier to press. And then you have show palm, so you can just do this to the camera and it will take the picture or start the video. Settings to keep, this is also important. So it will leave the settings or the camera app to what you had it at last. So camera mode, selfie angle, high resolution, filters, things like that. If you want it to stay where you left it, then turn these on for those things. Vibration feedback, so when you take a photo, it will vibrate. And then camera assistant is very important for different things. So zoom shortcuts is what I was talking about. So you can turn on 2x, 10x, and 100x. Just to access those zoom lengths very quickly and easily. They're not there by default, and like 10x is basically 2x of the 5x camera, and then 2x is 2x of the 1x camera, the main camera. So those are pretty important focal lengths because they're zoomed in more than the natural lengths of the cameras, but they're also really good quality because it's just 2x. It's just 2 times that, and it's cropping into the sensors. And an auto HDR, basically just optimizing the photo a little bit more automatically with the software of the camera or the phone to make it look more contrasting and stuff like that. It takes a very bright image, a dark image, and then a middle image, and it combines them into one to, get the best result type of thing. You can leave that on or off, it's up to you. Picture softening, basically, do you want the phone to use software to, sharpen the image and stuff like that, edit it a little bit more? If you don't, then you can turn this on to medium or high, and it will do less sharpening and stuff like that. Auto lens switching, I turn that off because I don't want the phone to use the main camera when I'm trying to use the 5x. That doesn't make sense. But a lot of times it will do that in lower lit situations because the 5x is bigger and can capture more light. So in theory, it makes sense. But a lot of times it makes the image look worse than it actually needs to be. Distortion correction, you turn that on for ultra wide shots and selfie shots so that there's less distortion on the sides of the image like I showed with the ultra wide camera. And then advanced resolution options, adaptive pixel, reduce noise and low light by combining multiple lower resolution frames into a high resolution shot. So it's more AI stuff to kind of make it look better in the nighttime, in the dark. And then you can upscale your zoom camera shots as well. So these things, you can turn them on or off. Basically, a lot of these settings, you just got to play around with them and see what happens. And then you have quick tap shutter, so take a picture as soon as you press the button, and then prioritize focus over speed, so it will try to focus before it takes the picture. I leave these off because the camera is working fine for me anyways. I don't have any issues with it being too slow or anything like that, so I just leave those settings off for now. But if you need to turn them on, you can. And then video recording in photo mode, touch and hold the shutter button to record videos. In photo mode, I turned it off because I don't want it to randomly take a video. If I want to take videos, then I'll go into video mode. Multi photos for a timer. So if you set a timer, how many photos should it take? And then you can set the interval between those photos as well, which is cool. And then there's depth of field adapter correction. So automatically correct images flipped by external things that you connect to the camera or put on the camera to, do different things. Then you have basically just more lens things that you can put on the camera. You can cover the camera lenses to do different effects, like add colors or add filters for dealing with light better and stuff like that. This will help with correcting, any distortion or whatever. HDR 10 plus, just another level of what I was talking about with HDR, enhancing the contrast and the image overall. Audio monitoring, while you're recording video, it'll play the sound through the connected Bluetooth device. You can kind of hear how the audio sounds while you're recording video. That's good. Save videos to external storage. So that is really cool that they added this feature. This was something that I thought was cool when the iPhone 15s came out. So it saves space on your phone and it just could benefit your workflow depending on who you are. And then camera timeout, you can make your camera timeout a little bit longer than normal. Dim screen while recording, clean preview on external screens if you connect your phone to a display while recording video or taking pictures. So pretty cool. There's a lot of settings obviously. So now let's get into the video mode. Basically the same as before, but instead you have super steady. This is the option to keep the image stable while you're moving or while you're running around. It crops in on the image a little bit more, so the quality is not going to be as good as with it off, but it is nice to have if you're somebody who's, you know, recording like a high intense action scene, or like, you know, you're running around with your phone, then this will definitely help you with that. And then you have your frame rates and your resolution. So you can go up to 8K, UHD is 4K, FHD is 1080p, and then HD is 720. And you have FPS, frames per second, 60 and 30 by default. And basically what these mean is high resolution equals, you know, it's going to look better, but then the files are going to be bigger. I think you want to stay around 4K and full HD 1080p. And then the FPS, you record 60 FPS is double the amount of the default one for like action shots or like things that are moving really fast and you need to slow it down afterwards. Mainly I use 60 FPS shots to slow down the shot. So like let's say I'm recording a product video, I'll do like a slow pan or something like that, like this, with 60 FPS. And that allows me to slow it down and make it look smooth while it's slowed down. Whereas with 30 FPS, if you slow that down, it's look pretty choppy and laggy and stuff. It's not gonna look good. So I use 60 FPS for that. But yeah, it's mainly for like action and movements. Whereas 30 FPS is more for like just everyday life. It's more for like looking natural. But when you switch back and forth between them, you could feel like 30 FPS looks laggy and choppy compared to 60, but it's just like an effect on your brain. It's not actually laggy. But if you're somebody who doesn't care, you want to save storage, then just stay in 30 and you will be good. But at the bottom, it's the same thing. You got your focus enhanced, turn that on and off. Then you can switch through the focal lengths, the range of the zoom and the lenses. And then you also can adjust the same settings, except for this being different, the super steady mode. Another cool, interesting feature that's different, you have auto framing. So your camera will smartly try to frame the subject. So let's say I put this as a subject, the camera will try to follow it. So as you see, it's following the subject around. I think that's pretty cool. I might even actually try that a little bit more. I take it off the screen, it's gone, and it goes back to normal. Then tracking is on again. That is really cool actually. So underrated feature, but that's what auto framing is. You can do up to 4K 30. It's not bad. And then apparently you can only do filters in 1080p video. So if you want to add filters to the video, you can only do that in 1080p. But if you record a 4K video, you can edit it afterwards and add filters if you want anyways. Depends on how much you value the in-camera filters. But that's basically the video app. It's not too much different from photos other than super steady and auto frame. So next you have portrait, and it's the same. You got the zooms at the bottom. And if you go here, different things are, you know, skin smoothness. If you want to customize the way faces look, and you can adjust the blur. So taking a picture of our subject, Togepi, you can see that the background will get blurred out, and you can add more or less of the blur if you want. It's artificial blur. So it's trying to create the look of like a camera lens that is good for portrait shots, for giving a good bokeh, the blur of the background. And yeah, you can customize it. You can customize the way it looks. There's some different filters. And then next is the zoom length. So it will use the different lenses that you have access to. As you see, it switched between from the 3x to the 5x. And then you can go back to the main camera with 2x and get a little bit closer. And that's basically it. Everything else is basically the same as other camera modes. The main thing you're doing in portrait mode is seeing if you like the background blur and if it fits your standards. And I think portrait mode on this phone is really, really good. All right, the next mode we have is Pro Photography Mode, Pro Photo Mode. It's just called Pro. And here it's just the photo mode, but giving you full controls over the camera. So you can change the ISO, which is like the lights, the sensitivity of the sensor to light. and you can adjust the shutter speed, which is how fast it will take the image. So if I go up, 180th of a second, then it will be really fast at capturing the image. This is more so good for like action shots and stuff like that, and when you have a lot of light outside, because the faster the shutter speed, the less light it's going to take in, and then the darker the image will be. And same thing with ISO. The lower this number, that means it's going to be less sensitive to light, and then the higher the ISO, the more sensitive it is, but the lower the quality is going to be. You'll see more noise at higher ISO levels. So you want to be around 100 ISO, and then adjust your shutter speed accordingly. And then you obviously might need to do different things to get the image to not be too dark or too bright, depending on your scene and where you're taking pictures. So Pro Photo Mode gives you manual control over that, and you also have manual focus. You can see you move between the different focus ranges of this camera. And then you also have the white balance. You can manually adjust your white balance, make it cooler or warmer. And then for focus, you can tap different focus modes. So like there's center focus, so focus whatever's on the center, and then also try to get everything in focus or like a bigger range. And then you have manual, of course. So if we go back down here, you have different tones. You can adjust the image a little bit more. So you have tint, saturation, shadows, highlights, contrast. And then if you go over, you have the way that the sensor is prioritizing the light balance. So this is different metering modes. You have matrix metering, is good for broad subjects like landscape shots. And then you have spot metering, good for backlit subjects like in a studio or something like that, or high contrast shots. And then you have the default, which is center weighted metering, good for close-up portraits. So you can swap between them to, see what kind of results you get and what you want, what you're looking for. And you can also add the exposure monitor. It will show you what's overexposed using the zebra pattern. You can use false color to like really check out your scene and see like what's good and what's not. You have raw, so you can manually toggle raw on and off if you want. And you have the same megapixel modes. But in Pro mode, you can't do 200 megapixels, unfortunately. So you can only go up to 50, which is still fine. I think 50 is more than enough, to be honest, to get a really, really high quality pro photography shot. So you can mess around with all these settings and try to get an image that looks better for you. Pro mode generally does not process the photo as much as the regular photo mode. So you're going to get a more natural looking shot, and it's going to be more weighted and based on what you have your settings at. So what your shutter speed is at, where your ISO is at, your focus, your white balance, and even the metering modes you choose, raw photos or not. All those things are going to have more weight to how the outcome of your photo looks versus just going into photo mode and taking a picture, and then it's just automatically making it look good. More control, you can see it looks more natural. It's just very different from the auto mode. All right, so the next camera mode we'll go through is Pro Video. So here it's basically like Pro Photography but video, and you can see similar things. So the ISO, like I said, the sensitivity to the lights, and then the shutter speed. The higher the shutter speed, the less light you're bringing in, because the faster it's going to take the image. The slower it is, the more light you're bringing in, because the slower it's taking the image. You have your FPS now, so that adds into the mix. In Pro Video mode, you have access to 24 FPS, and then you also have 120 FPS. So the same things apply. Like 24 FPS is going to look like more natural and like kind of cinematic, or like kind of like a old TV show type of vibe, or old movie. Whereas 120 FPS is like very fast and very smooth. You're capturing motion very smoothly, and then it allows you to slow it down even more if you wanted to. And then generally, a rule of thumb that I've learned, with photography and like having a camera and stuff in the past, is that for your FPS that you choose, generally you want to start at, so let's say you start at 30, you want it to be your shutter speed, you want it to be double that amount. So if I am at 30 FPS, then my shutter speed should be around 1/60th of a second. And then if I go up to, let's say I go up to 60 FPS, then I want my shutter speed to be 120. And then 120 FPS, my shutter speed should be around 140. Should be around 240, and so on. The reason you do that is just because the shutter speed being double of the FPS just makes it look like the smoothest and the most natural for the FPS that you choose. But of course you can play around with it. So if you, raise the shutter speed, let's say I go to 24 FPS and I raise the shutter speed, it's going to give a different kind of effect and feel. Whereas if I slow the shutter speed, then it will also give an interesting look as well. So you could play around with it. There is creative freedom, but generally you want your shutter speed to be around double the amount of your FPS. So 24 FPS, then I'm going to make my shutter speed 1/50th of a second, and I'll lower the ISO to balance the light so it's not too bright, if that makes sense. Then you have the same things like the focus, you have white balance, all the same stuff. In this mode, you have the histogram. So as you move the camera around, you will see the light balance. The left side is darker tones or darker colors or the lowlights, and then the right side is highlights. So if I increase the exposure, then you'll see the histogram shift towards the right because the highlights are being more blown out, and you can see the very big spike on the right side. If I lower the ISO, then it's going to be darker, and then you're going to see the left side become more prominent and have more spikes. So the histogram is just a quick thing to see, you know, what your balance is looking like. Generally, you want it to look not like heavy on one side or too heavy on one side, and kind of more balanced throughout the image. Yeah, and you have your meters for your audio, so you can see the two audio for the both directions, so left and right. And at the top, you can actually change where the mic is prioritizing. So if I have it set to rear, it's going to be recording audio mainly from the back of the phone, so where the cameras are facing. But if I have it set to front, then it's going to be recording audio mainly from what's in front of the screen, so from this direction. And then if I have Omni, then it's recording all around, trying to capture as much audio as possible. So generally you want to leave it on rare because you're most likely going to be shooting video like this or like this with your main cameras, and you're trying to get the audio of that. Unless you're doing like a vlog or something, then you would probably change it to front. But it's cool to have that customization and freedom. And then you have more options. So you have USB. I'm actually using a USB mic with the phone that I'm recording with right now, a Samsung phone. If you connect a USB mic, even like actual real mics, like for example, this is a Shure MV7. You can connect these kind of mics and other mics to these Samsung phones and choose to use those, which is really cool. Then you can also use Bluetooth, which allows you to use things like your wireless earbuds, and you can do like a Bluetooth mix, which is interesting. Yeah, so you have different options when it comes to the mics and what you prioritize with the built-in mics, because the other devices like iPhones, you don't have that seamless ability to just switch between your audio sources and things like that to have that control. Then you have exposure monitor, same thing as you saw pro photo mode, and that's basically pro video. It's just going to be like video mode, but more controls, and then the image is also going to be a little bit more natural and not over processed. So if you want to like dive deep into creativity and stuff like that, then you definitely should come here and do as much as you can. And then if I go back to settings, advanced video options, if I turn on HEVC, then I can have log mode, and you can have it both in pro and video mode. And this allows me to capture log video, which is basically like, as you see, it looks washed out in the viewfinder. It's just capturing more detail, more dynamic range, and then allows you to edit your videos more in-depthly, to add color that you want, to add tone, to add contrast, all that stuff. You have more control when you record video like this in log, and you can just tap that to turn it off, turn it on. All right, so now let's get into the fun modes, the extra camera modes. And actually, before I do that, you can drag and customize your camera app. So let's say I want dual record. This is another extra mode. I want it to be like in the middle. I can drag that there if I want to, and you press save and boom. So you can add all these if you want to. And we'll start with dual record. So dual record allows you to record video with two lenses at the same time. So you can record with the front lens, the ultra wide, the wide, the telephoto. Any two of these lenses you can record at the same time. So if I select these two, then I have a telephoto perspective and the ultra wide perspective. And I can move this around in real time in the video. I can expand it a little bit, can minimize it, bring it back up, can double tap to minimize it a little bit more. And then you can also record in 4K 30, which is really, really cool. Save the videos in separate files, which is also a nice feature as well. HDR, you can turn that on and off. And then you can also customize the layout of it. So you can have a split screen perspective where it shows both of them side by side. You can have picture in picture. And then you can also switch which camera is the main and which camera is not. So if I tap that, then the zoom telephoto camera will be the main one. The ultra will be the one in the little box. So really cool mode for capturing different perspectives and capturing a little bit more than you normally would be able to. And especially if you're vlogging, you can show your face while you're recording your background. So that's really cool that you can do that, you know, multiple perspectives while you're vlogging and stuff like that. Just gives you so many options. And then the next mode we'll look at is food mode. Basically, this is just a regular photography mode, but its aim is to make food look more tasty, and it will just, you know, give it some extra flair. You can adjust some different things like exposure. You can adjust the blur effect, so basically like portrait but for food. You can adjust the color tone, the white balance, the aspect ratio, watermark, and that's basically it. It's not too much to the food mode. It's just like something specifically designed to make your food look tastier, as they say. And then you have panorama. So this allows you to capture a really big or really long image with your either your ultra wide or your main camera. So you can start it, and then you just move the phone along the line. Try to keep it stable as possible. And as you can see, it's a longer image than normal. This is obviously not a good shot, but with this, you can do different things. Like you can actually hold it horizontal like this and go up and down. Now we have a really long shot with, you know, interesting perspective on top of the desk itself, and then under the desk type of thing. So you can do a lot of cool things with panorama, and I think it's actually an underrated feature that a lot of people don't really think about using anymore. Before, on like old phones, this was like a cool feature, but now it's forgotten. But I think you can get some really cool shots, and like nowadays with these phone cameras, you can get some high quality panorama shots, especially like landscape shots. Definitely mess around with that. You can adjust the exposure here as well, which is a good addition. And then next you have hyperlapse. So basically you're just recording a really fast video, and it's a time lapse. So, you know, you can choose how fast it will be, and then the longer you record, the more cool and interesting it will look. So I'll just give you an example. If I just, you know, do a bunch of different things, and it also tells you how long the video will be, which is cool. You can even switch between the lenses while you're recording, which is nice as well. So this is real time, and then this is like how long the video itself will be. So 2 seconds. As you can see, hyperlapses take really long to get like an actual long video. So that's the hyperlapse I just recorded. It's only 2 seconds long. This is mainly for like, you know, things like catching the clouds going by, or like catching the sun go up and down, things like that, where you set up a camera and you just let it sit for a long time, or watching the rain move. You can get some interesting shots. So definitely mess around with hyperlapse if you want. You can do 4K 1080p, and then you also have auto for the speed that it speeds up by, and HDR as well. Next is night mode. So night mode is kind of redundant because when you're shooting in low light anyways, your phone will automatically shoot in night mode anyways. When there's a little bit of light, as you see the moon came out, you can turn it on and off, but generally it will do its thing when the light is not ideal. But night mode, if you want to force it, you can definitely go there and try to force it to do a night mode shot. But there's not a lot of options in night mode. It's basically just regular camera, mainly auto, and then you adjust the exposure, the base exposure before you take the shot, the watermark on and off, etc. And then you have slow motion. So slow motion is as simple as it gets. You can record up to 120 FPS, 4K for slow motion, which is a cool addition. And it's just gonna record everything, but you know, in slow mo. You don't need to use the slow motion app. You can just do this in the pro video mode, or even in regular video mode with 60 FPS, and then slow it down yourself afterwards. Samsung phones have the ability now to tap on a video in the gallery app and slow it down. This is not the same as normally slowing it down because it adds its own frames, and you can actually save that clip, but it is pretty good for your average person. So slow motion is still there if you want it. Only works with the regular camera and the ultra wide. And then you have single take. So single take will take a picture and record a video at the same time. So you just hold your phone up for 15 seconds or however long, and you can stop it whenever you want as well, and it will do its thing. So you see the original video, the crop shot, boomerang shot, and then another additional picture. So a single take is just cool for capturing different moments and images. Use it with kids or groups of people and things like that. Then you have portrait video, very simple. It's literally just portrait mode, but in video format. And it works decently well now on the smartphones nowadays. And Samsung has this nice zoom slider they added to the video modes now, which is pretty cool because it's smooth. And yeah, you can see how it's blurring out the background in portrait video. And then you can also adjust the strength of the blur, make it more or less. But obviously, the more you add, the more artificial it's going to look, and the more artifacts you'll see with it not blurring properly. But I think it's really good nowadays. As you can see here, the quality is good. The background blur is good. It doesn't look too fake, even with something like this, where it's not a person, and less light will definitely yield a lower quality video for portrait video, and you can only do up to 4K 30 FPS. And you can turn HDR on and off. Not too many settings, just exposure, the normal stuff that you see in the other modes. All right, the next thing you have is Expert RAW. It's not actually a mode in the camera app. It's kind of its own app. As you can see, it's asking for permissions because I opened it for the first time on this phone. All the normal stuff that you can do in pro photography mode, you can do that here, but you have a little bit more options and customization. Like for example, by default, it's shooting at 24 megapixels versus the 12 in the other modes. And this is the only mode on Samsung devices that can do 24 megapixels. Then you have RAW and JPEG, and then you can choose between them as well. And then you have your normal controls. And then there's just so much more. Like you can add an artificial ND filter, which will help with, like, let's say you want to capture more lights, but then you don't have an ND filter, then that will help. Then there's astrophotography mode, astro portrait. So you get a person in the frame of the astrophotography mode or the astrophotography picture. Then you can do multiple exposures, which is really, really cool. So like, let's say I do 4 and then I do manual exposure. I can take a picture, then I can take the next picture, and then the next one, and then one perspective up here. And obviously this is going to look like madness, but there is that. So multiple exposures, as you can see. But you can do some cool things with that if you play around with the settings. Obviously lower the light intake and things like that. And you can do some pretty cool things. So that is also another cool feature. And then you also can change the f-stop. This also impacts the light intake and kind of the focus as well. You can adjust your focus like normal. But the cool thing about Expert RAW that I actually really like is that you can create your own presets. So like, let's say there's certain settings that I use when I'm outside or it's a bright sunny day. I can have those presets saved, and then boom, they're there. And you can name them as well, and it automatically switches to those presets. That is really, really cool, and I think they should just bring that to the normal camera app as well. But yeah, that's basically Expert RAW, like just taking photography deeper on another level. Yeah, you can go a little bit deeper with photography here, especially if you have a tripod, you set this up, you can get some really nice landscape shots, some really nice, you know, even like street photography shots with the Samsung devices nowadays, especially the S25 Ultras. That's basically all the camera modes for the S25 Ultra and how you use them and how they work, all the functionalities. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. And if you want any tips and stuff like that, I will have videos with some tips coming on the way for how to get the best shots, the best images. But yeah, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and consider subscribing because I got a lot more content on the way. But until next one, we are out. Peace.